Well, today my conversation is with Concertmaster Jun-Ching Lin, and he's for the Concertmaster for the Kalamazoo Symphony Orchestra. And see, when I knew I was going to talk to you, I actually looked up the definition, and I read that a concertmaster is the most skilled and the most knowledgeable violinist in the orchestra.
I hesitate to say most skilled because that it seems so arrogant to say that. The concertmaster is the first violinist. With that chair comes the expectation that you play your instrument really, really well. If the composer writes a solo in that part, you're supposed to be able to suddenly play a solo by yourself. It's usually my responsibility to make sure that the communications from the conductor are understood by mostly by the string players, but there are some kind of musical considerations that the winds and brass need to understand, and hopefully I can help facilitate that understanding.
Now, I know you have your violin there with you, so I was hoping you could tell me a little bit about your violin. How old is it? Where did you get it? And does it make a difference if you're playing this violin or another violin?
Well, okay, so this is my violin. I've had it for about 30 years. It was made, the label says 1690. Label can lie, but it's definitely by the maker that made it. So it's certainly from around that period. So if you think about it, that's 330 years old, right? And so I think of it as like I'm taking care of it for the next person. You know, obviously no one player has had the violin for 300 years. So it's amazing what works of art they are. And that's, I don't know if the viewers know, certain violins go in the tens of millions of dollars. And that's because they are objects of art. And certain violins by certain makers are considered, you know, the Picassos or the Renoirs of violin. And so they go in those many millions. This does not go quite in that millions of dollars range, but it was made in the same small little city in Italy, Cremona, Italy, at the same time by those makers. And this maker is a very well-known maker. His name is Francesco Ruggieri, and he's probably better known for cellos, but I've had this violin, like I said, for about 30 years. I got it from a shop in Philadelphia.
And what do you think violins bring to an orchestra as both a player and as a concertmaster?
The violin part, the first violin part that I play, the concertmaster plays, and the first violin section is usually the kind of the melody or the main line that the audience will hear. If you ask what we bring beyond our enormous good looks, I think that it's usually the line that you go home humming.
How does it create sound?
The very basics of how a violin makes sound have to do with the four strings and this thing, which is called a bow. And this white strip that you see here is actually horsehair.
Oh.
So it's the tail of a horse, and it gets covered in tree sap, rosin essentially, and that creates some friction with the string and pulls a certain sound out of it. So that's the kind of basics of how a violin produces sound. There's all this things about the bridge and sound boxes, and it's hollow inside and all that kind of stuff. Probably a little too technical, but a lot of what I do in classical music is very specific indications that the composer has written. So the composer will write if I have to play short notes. So if they want a lot of notes that are short together, they'll write a certain indication. If they don't want me to use my bow, I'll pluck. That's called pizzicato.
Now, I saw you on YouTube playing two violins.
I was playing it's called a canonic duo, and Georg Philipp Telemann wrote a duo for violin. So it's essentially like row, row, row your boat.
Yeah.
Where someone starts on the next stanza. And so I recorded the first part, and then I had to wait for my video self to come to play two measures, and then I came in again. And just to change it up a little bit, I decided to change the angle so that I was not facing the same direction. I took off my glasses, so I wasn't wearing glasses. And so that it would be two different me's playing. I changed shirts too, so I would have a different shirt on while I was playing. And what was really funny was when I first got the link after it produced, and I put it on my computer, and my wife walked by and she looked at it and she said, "Who are you playing with?" She didn't know who the other violinist was when it was her husband of 32 years.
Can you play a little bit for me?
Sure. Here's a little bit of Bach. Hopefully you can see. Wait, I'm angling my...
Oh my gosh, that's so beautiful. That's so beautiful.
No,
Thank you so much for talking with me here today. That's so beautiful.
Well, it's my pleasure, and I look forward to talking to you again.
Support for Kalamazoo Lively Arts is provided by the Irving S. Gilmore Foundation, helping to build and enrich the cultural life of Greater Kalamazoo.